Hi, I'm Elisa, and today we are reflecting on all of the money that I spent in 2024. So I sat down and I went through and categorized all of my purchases, and honestly, I'm disgusted with myself, I have to be honest. I wanted 2024 to be a year of less buying stuff, less wasting money, more debt payoff, more saving, and I completely lost the plot about mid-year and just stopped caring. So I'm hoping that by doing this reflection, being honest, I will hold myself accountable this year and not let myself sink into those old habits again, and hopefully be able to pay off the amount of debt that I wanted to pay off last year. My net pay last year, my gross pay last year was $86,171. My net pay after retirement, insurance, taxes was $53,561. Keeping that in mind, the fact that I spent $62,215 is disgusting. I spent $9,000 more than I made, most of which on credit cards. It's awful. So going account by account, I spent $0 on my Truist credit card, $2,084 on my Chase Sapphire, $11,740 on my Chase Freedom credit card, $2,353 on my Capital One card. For my bills checking account, I spent $10,271, and from my other checking account, I spent $35,765. My account balances at the beginning of the year, which have already improved, I had $16,166 in retirement, which is not enough. I had $1,821 in my emergency fund and $100 in my sinking funds. My debt balances at the end of last year was $0 on my Truist, $0 on my Chase Sapphire, $2,072 on my Chase Freedom, $4,825 on my Capital One, $3,897 on my car loan, $9,638 on my personal loan, and $36,328 on my federal loans. And finally, the big one, $145,575 in private student loans, for a grand total of $202,335. It's gross. So looking back, there are two balances on this spreadsheet that make me mad at myself. The first being the personal loan. I took the personal loan out in March of last year to pay off credit card debt. It was for about $14,500. It had a much lower interest rate than the credit cards that I was paying off. And I had heard, like, hey, you shouldn't get a personal loan to pay off your credit cards because it doesn't make you work for it. It clears them out and then allows you to continue paying or spending on those cards. And I was like, oh, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to put myself back in that situation. And I was good for a couple months. And then June came. I went to Austin, Texas to visit my brother. And all bets were off and I just started spending money. And then it was my birthday, and then it was vacation, and then it was, oh, it's becoming fall time. And I took a trip to Vegas at one point, and I didn't have Vegas clothes for a bachelorette party. And it just kept building, and I kept making excuses. And once I started, it was like a compulsive desire. I could not stop, and it was ridiculous. And now I'm right back with credit card debt on top of the personal loan. So all in all, it's about $15,000 of just credit card purchases. I also got that Capital One card as a balance transfer card. So I'd put, I think, $3,500 on it, and then I spent more on it. And then I continued to rack up money on what the card I paid off. So it's So it's something that I have to face, and looking at this, it doesn't allow me to ignore it. It doesn't allow me to just stick my head back in the sand and say, oh, it really wasn't that bad. It was that bad. And I know that. So we're going to go into categories now. So on groceries, this is food that I needed to buy or I bought for the intent of buying groceries. I spent $2,154. But on miscellaneous food like takeout, restaurants, coffees out, I spent $3,678. $1,500 more spent on going out to eat. It's ridiculous. Transportation, this includes car insurance, gas. I got brand new tires and a bunch of other work done on my car this year. That was $4,826. I call it rent. I basically just throw money to my fiance each pay period to help out. That was $4,300. Medical, this is co-pays, prescriptions. I got glasses, $1,302. Clothes, $4,190. And that's not even all of it. And we'll talk about that later. But that is so upsetting to see because that takes into account the amount of returns I made. And I was always in denial about it and saying, well, you know, I just order stuff and then I return what I don't like and I'm really picky about what I keep. And then I'm like, obviously you aren't because you spent $4,000 last year on clothes. I spent $980 on beauty products, which is a lot, but also I know for a fact previous years it was way more. I spent $2,041 on books, which I acquired way more books than I read last year, which was not something I wanted to do at all. I had been getting better at curbing my book buying, and then this past year it was just like, oh, they're secondhand, it doesn't matter. Oh, I'm on a trip, I want to get a book. In Austin, I bought like a dozen books, and it's just... I spent $350 on my cat last year. I spent $3,872 on gifts, and a lot of this is Christmas and me not sticking to a gifts budget. So that is something that is definitely changing this year because I have to buckle down and follow a budget. I spent $166 on fees, and that is everything from late fines to the library to anything else that might need to be charged. Not totally sure. I spent $1,335 on miscellaneous, and that's just random stuff that didn't fit into any of these categories, most of which I did not need. $263 on subscriptions, that's mostly Apple Music and like iCloud. $1,236 on home purchases, and those most of the time are just decor. Or I guess hand soap and stuff like that too, but a lot of it's decor. $3,352 on travel and experiences. This is a category that I'm fine spending money on because I value that, but everything else needs to change. This is the rest of the clothes budget. I spent $2,595 on buy now, pay later apps, which I have since deleted from my phone and will not be using. I had a really bad experience with Klarna back in June. That just put a bad taste in my mouth, which is probably the best thing that could have happened to me because it stopped me from using them. I had definitely stopped using my credit cards for the first half of the year, but it was because I was using pay later apps, and I have since stopped and don't intend on starting again because it's a slippery slope and it makes you think that you can afford stuff when you can't, and you're like, oh, it's not on a credit card, it's not that bad. It is that bad. I spent $702 on ebooks and audiobooks, which is ridiculous because I had really like not purchased an ebook or an audiobook, and then this past year every morning I would check the Kindle Daily Deals and the Audible Daily Deals page, And I would convince myself, oh, it's just $2, it's just $5. And then it adds up to $700 in a year. And now I have a mass amount of ebooks and audiobooks that I'm not actively reading. So $700 is just gonna sit on my devices. And finally, I made $24,757 of debt payments. So that means I spent $62,215 last year without the debt payment. That means I spent $37,343. And that is changing. That is definitely changing. Looking this in the face makes it so that I cannot ignore it anymore. I have started tracking my spending. First of all, I'm like obsessed with it. And I've set goal amounts for how much I want to spend in these categories. And they are much smaller. They are reasonable. I still, budgeted $3,000 for transportation this year. I still have a $3,000 gift budget, a $3,000 travel and experience budget, because I am aware of things that I enjoy doing and I don't want to completely rice and beans it and, really just sacrifice everything to pay it off. I have a plan, and the consumer debt, and my car, will be paid off by the end of the year. That is my goal. I have a plan to achieve that goal. My student loans are going to take longer. It's just the way that is. I have already refinanced my student loans twice to get the interest rate down. I will continue to do that. I will check every 6 months or so just to see if I can get a better rate, and hopefully I get a better rate, I don't know, and I pay less interest over time. I've been tracking how much interest I pay every month, and that's also an eye-opener because it's so easy to stick your head in the sand and say, oh, it doesn't matter. It does matter. You're spending so much more than if you just paid in cash. Obviously, I can't pay in cash my student loans at this point, but it has been an eye-opening experience to go through and categorize all my spending and realize how much I was spending on everything. It's not fun to realize the hole that I've put myself in, but it's necessary to know how deep that hole is, and it makes me much more focused. I think before I didn't really have set goals. I kind of was just like, I want to pay stuff off. I have a number. I want to pay off $50,000 worth of debt. 20,000 of it I want to be my car, my credit, my personal loan. I'm on track. I already paid off a credit card this year. I am going to pay off my car hopefully by the end of March. It has helped a lot to have a set goal of the wedding and knowing that not only do I need to pay off debt, but I need to save for the wedding. It has helped a lot to think of things in terms of the wedding. So $6 feels like nothing, but it's 6 plates, or it's 12 forks or whatever that I have to rent. And it's those reminders that I have a bigger goal. Obviously, financial freedom should be a good enough goal, but as someone who does have ADHD, the shine rubs off of financial freedom. Not super quickly at this point, but quicker than I can get a wine glass, or I can get a bunch of wine glasses, or I can get some Starbucks. And that has really reset my focus. And honestly, writing it out has forced me to look it in the face. I have noticed things like I overbought bridesmaid dress samples last month. And though I didn't spend that much on it, it was still $20. It's still wasteful. And it was unnecessary. So being honest with myself, but not digging myself into a hole of guilt either, is something else that I have to deal with. I am working through a lot of shame and self-esteem issues with my therapist, and there is a lot of shame when it comes to my debt and the way that I've spent my money in the past. And part of me working through that shame and that guilt is sharing this with all of you. I know I'm not alone in these habits or in this debt, especially when it comes to student loans. I obviously have a lot of student loans, but it's something that feels really lonely, and I'm hopeful that you all will share your experiences with me in the comments and will be supportive and hopefully not too mean. I know talking about money brings out a lot of stuff from a lot of people, and yeah, I was really stupid with my money. I was not smart, I was not mature about it, and I treated it like it was a joke or like it didn't matter, even when I was well aware of how much debt I was in. So I am hoping that by taking accountability, by making these videos, by tracking my spending and then sharing that spending with you, I will keep myself on track. And basically the shame of having to come back and be like, I really failed, will stop the shame of the debt. I'm just kidding. I'm not using, I really don't want to use shame as my main factor. But financial freedom obviously is a huge goal, but having that closer, more concrete goal of the wedding helps a lot, and I am hoping to stay on track this year, to not fall back on old habits, and to remember you can say a lot with where you put your money, and I need to be more careful about where I'm putting mine. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you will feel encouraged to share your story down below. If you have money saving, debt payoff tips, I'd love to hear them. I probably have heard them. I'm very, very into personal finance TikTok. But thank you so much for watching. Comment, like, subscribe, all the normal stuff, and I will see you guys again really soon. Bye.